My name is Ted Arden, and I am an affiliated faculty in the art history department. We're in this building where my home department, Cinema, Art, and Science, is. But I have this wonderful pleasure of introducing Jane Cassidy, fresh off the plane from Alabama, where she is residing, although she was born in Galway, Ireland, and she'll tell us a bit more about her background and how she wound her way through the United States education process, although she came prepared with an advanced degree already from Ireland, and then a glutton for punishment, got an MFA from Tulane University, where she, unlike today, set off fire alarms all the time. But so Jane Cassidy, as you know, is an artist who both is skilled, as you heard, in sound and media, visual media, but sonic media as well. And she'll again tell us where those interests and explorations have led her. And there's a wonderful intersection between sort of cinematic practice and then fine art practice, and also starting with perceptual, fascinating sort of objects. And I had the pleasure of bringing down a group of students today, younger students who have less exposure to sort of fine arts, light art, and it was interesting to just see them take it in and silently wondered, what they were looking at as they were looking at it. So, and that's the beauty of this kind of work, is it's very experiential. It's kind of difficult to describe it, but whenever I find myself describing Jane's work, it's always met with, that sounds interesting or fascinating, especially when you can mention the fire alarm culprit, fog machines, or Jane's latest interest doing installation in real world situations with actual fog, which she's been practicing at in the humid environs of New Orleans. So anyway, Jane is here on behalf of the Rubin Award, so I'd like to definitely thank the Rubin Fellowship Committee for that, which is fabulous. And so without further ado, let's please help me welcome Jane Cassidy to our stage.
The best way to understand how I came on this path of being like an audio-visual, immersive installation artist, it's best to know where I came from. And so I began with studying a music degree in Trinity College in Dublin, and I focused on music technology and composition. And while I was working on my degree, I was really inspired visually to make my music. So especially thinking about lighthouses and trying to interpret that in my music, and the work of Janice Canellis, the sculptor, and thinking about texture and form and what way that could inform my music. So then, I was just trying to always incorporate that. And so it's very common for people to make videos for music, but I really wanted to try and make them very specifically for my own music and to bring my music to life visually. And I grew up with a crazy love for MTV, as many people would, and Terence Donovan, and major crush on Robert Palmer always. And then later getting into Autechre and Chris Cunningham and Aphex Twin. And also in Dublin there's a really big, rave scene, I may as well call it what it is, and I was definitely of that. And so live visuals are so huge in Europe and Ireland, and so it was always feeding into what I wanted to do. So since, of course, I did a pretty redundant and useless bachelor's degree, it was what'll I do now? Well, I'll just stay in academia. And there's a master's program in Dublin of music and media technologies at Trinity College. And God, it's just amazing, and it's really rigorous the way they teach you. And I was I'm mad into learning how to visualize all my compositions. And then they're well, this is the place for you, baby girl. And so I joined and got my insights into visual music. And so visual music is where image and sounds are really tightly intertwined, synchronized in texture and harmony and form and Like big artists would be Norman McLaren, Oscar Fischinger, John Whitney, and these were all my entry guys after the Robert Palmer videos where I could go. So I began to think about my work in a very synesthetic manner. And so in the same way that, like synesthesia is when two or more senses can be combined. So like to see the word Tuesday, you might think green, or the letter 7 or the number 7 might smell like chocolate or something. Like you always hear really funny instances of it. And I'm not a synesthete, but I do think very synesthetically about my work. So harmony is usually mapped with colour. Timbre is like with whatever way I might treat texture or surface in the visuals. And so I think that was around 2006. And from then on, it's like led me really well through my work. And so I was thinking about my work very specifically in relation to image and sound. And I began to make my music, and straight away I'd be making the visuals first. So I might like just write 30 seconds of music and then make the visuals straight away and let that feed back into the music and back and forth. And so then it meant there was an absolute synchrony the whole time between them both, and it kind of let me create a more unique art form for myself anyway. And so in the thesis, well, I was a very lucky ducky. It was like 3 semesters of intensive teaching and then a semester where you just work on your thesis project. And it was a research institution, and so they gifted me a classroom where I could build out my installation for 3 months. And I was hyper interested in surround sound and what way I could engulf the audience in sound. And I'd already been working at 5.1. And then we were like, well, why not up the ante and make 10.1? So it's 2 tiers of 5.1, so 1 regular height and then 1 above. And that means the sound can travel the whole way around the audience. And it's a really beautiful and fun experience. And so I made this piece the night after I kicked it. And it was very inspired by, I guess, Ryoji Aikida would be a big one to go to. And like I was very interested in like Sol LeWitt and Mona Hatoum, and the way they're dealing with geometry and lines and light. And so I made this 10-minute piece that was for 10.1 surround sound, and I've only ever seen it 3 times publicly with the 10.1, which is always a bit of a lament for me. And when I was working with 2D, it was largely like frontal sound, and then as soon as it would open up into 3D, then the sound would move in and around the audience. And so I'll just show a little clip. It's 10 minutes, but I'll just show the last section of it. Kind of hear the rave scene come out in that one. And the rest of the piece is really very different, and then it gets pretty metric with that section. And so with that work I was really expanding orally, but I really wanted to expand into space visually, and that can be quite a challenging thing to do. So I started to play around a lot with space and light, and I was working in animation for quite a few years, but I wasn't interested in working for the flat screen anymore. And, you know, I've long been fascinated by light, and like, you're all into it, no doubt. When you go to the cinema and when you look at the projector and you can just see all the dust in front of it, that, along with Robert Palmer in my youth, always had me going. So it was like, how am I going to manifest this? And I got a fog machine, and we wanted to try and set it up today with the old alarm systems in many buildings. It will set off the alarm, so I couldn't. So I wrote 2 works. I wrote one called Square Ball, and the other is Purple Tinged Pearl Button Bangle Billy. And they're very immersive because the light and fog moves around your body, and normally they're in a room that's maybe 25 foot long and 10 foot wide, and they're moving light sculptures really, and you can play around with them a lot. Like if you're using your hands, you can move the fog around a lot, and you can really play with the light, but they can also become hyper meditative spaces as you sit with them, because the motion is always very fluid with them. Because that's something I'm really interested in, like some stuff that's slow moving more so. I guess more so than the last piece anyway. And so I should show you a little bit of it so you can get an understanding. This is a picture from someone had made a video of it at Ann Arbor last year, and the video is of someone just standing in it, and then halfway through they just go like this. And I was really into it, and this picture gives a really good example of how playful the work is, and because children get really into it, and grown-ups alike. And making these works for me was a great kind of shift in my work, because my parents don't have any like formal art education or have very much experience of art, and my work can be really quite difficult sometimes and not have great entryways. And I study in contemporary composition, so sometimes that means that it's like not metrical in its tempo and maybe just sounds a bit harsher. So I know like they were always very supportive of me, but it was hard for them too. So when they saw the fog pieces, like one might only be 3 or 5 minutes long on a loop, and they'd be sitting in there for half an hour going, well, I don't know what it is, but I really like it. And I'm like, that's amazing. And like from then on, maybe not for every piece, but like the more people I can engage with, it's been a really fun endeavor for me. And sometimes the rigors of academia, or like when you're younger and you're kind of trying to hone in your skills, like especially doing a composition degree, you're writing difficult music. Like it sounds bad, but you think maybe I'm making something new by making these awful noises. And then sometimes it takes a while to find your voice. And with these, I was finding my voice, and I was slowing the music down, and maybe not being afraid to like lull on 2 chords for a while, because I always felt like I had to write everything, So anyway, and so I briefly wanted to show this slide to talk about space in my work, and this one's for you, Ted. So in 2011, I went to Nebraska for a few months, to Art Farm, Nebraska, and did a residency. And it was an incredible time in my life being out there, like dealing with light and experiencing the sky and all the colours so differently. Because like I'm from the west of Ireland, which is pretty cloudy and sideways rain, and so it was like so informative to my work. And it was the first time I was bringing in all those colours, all the prism colours. And I'm really interested in marking space in my sound as well. And I was looking for a big reverberant space, and it just so happened that there was an empty grain silo down the road from the farm, and it was empty for a week. And they're like, we'll drive you down there every day, and you got to use it for a week. And oh my God, did I use it? And so that's my banjo there, and some speakers, and I just go in there and write music and then play my own music back in it. And like sometimes I nearly deafen myself because the acoustic is so gargantuan. but I'm really into like reverb and reverb responses and convolution reverb. So I can record the reverb response of this silo and then apply it to my own music. So oftentimes with an awful lot of my music, I'm just making a synth myself just with sine tones. So with no harmonic stuff going on at all. And then I can apply the convolution reverb from the silo, and then you get these crazy rich notes and frequencies over it. And it leads to very easy distortion, because I'm really into distortion. But it just makes it so rich and beautiful. And so I'll often, if I find a space I really like a stairwell or whatever, I'll take the impulse response from it and play around with it. And yeah, so if you're wondering where a lot of my sounds come from, it's reverb response that I think is the core to it. And so this is my studio that was sitting out in the prairie. And this is good for talking about experimentation, because a lot of my work comes from being interested in something and what way I can make more out of it, as most people would make work. But like, seeing the projector and seeing the dust, and then what way can I manifest that and using the fog machine. And then I was like playing around with the projector at night and bringing it outside. And right in front of my studio was like a big bamboo forest. And I brought my projector out and started playing with it. And then I made a whole piece just for the bamboo forest. And it was so magic. And one night there was a burn pile near my studio. And the burn pile was sending all this smoke down. And so then the smoke interacted with the projection. And so the projection was a circle. And so the smoke made this huge like circle around me. And then the light going onto the trees made this like huge tunnel going like 100 yards deep, like 10, 15 feet tall. And then when I looked up, I could see the stars. And I was like, oh my God. And it's definitely those moments what keeps me being an artist and like pushes me the whole time to try and manifest that in the installations. And so it's important to be stoic about loss in life, but I was pretty annoyed that I couldn't see that piece anymore because it lived in Nebraska. So I made a much smaller version of it. So it was just like 6 foot long, and I made him a wire mesh sculpture. So I'm gonna show you that. And then there's this piece. They upped the game after the oranges, so I suppose you saw that. And with this piece, I really, because I was interested in changing around spaces and not working on the flat screen, so I was like, I'm going to make a piece for the corner, because I can show a corner anywhere, everywhere has corners, and I just never thought that every single corner has like a baseboard or pipes in it, and especially New Orleans. I made this when I was in New Orleans, and there's so many ornate corners, and I was like, well, this is a nightmare. And so like today we had to build out a corner, and that's what's happened with a lot of times I've installed this. I've had to build a corner especially for it, which you never expect, because I was like, it's my great socialist piece. Everyone can watch it wherever, but it doesn't have to be a flat screen. And it really didn't work out that way. But this piece is a good one because, not that it's a good piece, but it's a good one to think about, because when this section happens, a Moire pattern occurs very heavily in it, and so it almost makes it feel like it could be fabric or something. And the Moire pattern isn't in the animation at all, but it happened with the grid I was making when I warped it for the projection mapping, and then I was like, oh, this is brilliant. it's what a gift the world has just given me. And so then I just milked it for the rest of the piece. And so these happy accidents can get you a long way in life, because no way could I animate a Moire pattern like that. But I knew how to take advantage of it. And with this piece as well, I'm very interested in illusion and I guess confusing the viewer as to what they're looking at. And different pieces deal with that. It's not across the board, but this and a few other pieces that I was making around the same time. And now this next one's a big shift. This is whereas for me it means, and in my undergraduate I had made a piece inspired specifically by lighthouses and you know, the tempo of the lights turning around. And then I made a video for it, filming all the lighthouses, and I lost it because it was DV tape, and we're not so precious about those things. But I've been thinking about it ever since, and I was like, I'm going to rewrite the piece, and I'm going to make a light installation for it. And so with this was surround sound, so it was 16 speakers, and then on each speaker is an LED, and then behind that is a 3D printed globe. And it's 4 channels of sound, and that's split between the 16 channels. So when you walk around it, it'll always sound a little bit different. It's never really that loud, and it feels very intimate when you put it right to your ear. And the speakers light up as the audio goes through, which is a really nice way to work with light because it's so inconsistent. It's not on or off. It's flickering all the time. So I've had little kids go in, they're like, how did you catch all the fireflies? And that's really nice seeing that flicker. And the great pleasure of this one is to lie underneath it, because you can see I've written it so that the lights kind of converse with each other, the way I've worked it out with the surround sound. And right now it's installed in like a 40-foot elevator shaft in New York, one that doesn't have the elevator box in it anymore. So I'll show an excerpt from that. So as you can see, like a running theme in my work is light, and for the light to work you really need darkness to surround it. So most of my works are for nighttime viewing, and I just really need that vacuum of darkness, because your emotions too change throughout the day, and we're slower in the evening, and a lot of these pieces become a lot more meditative, and so that time of the day suits a lot better. And that kind of leads me well into this. So last year I was commissioned by a group of curators in France who are putting together like a radio show as exhibition in Grenoble in France, and it was up for a week, but they commissioned different artists and musicians from around the world to make work. And since I'm always interested in site-specific work, I was like, well, what can I do? And I was like, a car at night on a country road. And so I kind of remixed some of my older work and made some new work. And everything was mixed specifically for like a car sound system. And so this album came out of that. And then I was asked to make I was commissioned to make a piece for the New Orleans Film Festival as part of Cinema Reset. And they did a lot with experimental film and installations. And I was like, well, you know, let's take the album out on the road. So I made this installation. It was such a trip. It was really fun. And I just made this very recently. And so I put scrim on the windshield of the car and put a projector outside of it. And I made 25 minutes worth of music video essentially for the album, which was some hustle. But it's all country roads at night in Alabama. And every track is different, has a different aesthetic and different effects that I'm using, but it's pretty trippy. And like, as with my parents into work, I'm getting more and more into like relational aesthetics. Maybe not necessarily just like reading all through the theory, but my work follows into that very well, of like taking work outside of the gallery and making it so that people are very conversational around it. And so this piece, it was great. People were milling around a lot, and it would seat up to 5 people. There was good banter, and like banter inside the car. They weren't all listening to the piece, but that was totally fine. And in it, I left some Funyuns and Doritos so they could get the road trip vibe. Because I really wanted to make it, like, the visuals are quite trippy, and I wanted that because, you know, when you're on the road for a long time and there's that inherent musicality to the roads and the lights, and as well I put some Hennessy in the glove compartment because I didn't have a reception at it, so I was like, well, I better keep this in the fine art idiom where you have a reception on your opening night. So some Hennessy in the glove compartment for the inquisitive audience member. And I have a wee video, and I have to pop online for a second. A year. So in 2014 I had an opportunity, well, it was for my thesis, that I got to make, I had a full solo show in a great big gallery, and this was one of the rooms. So it's about 40 foot by 20 foot. And I'm very, like, I guess one of my favorite things in the world is the Lamont Young Dream House in New York, and it's a permanent installation with like a carpet and drones, and it can become really transcendental when you settle into it. And if you don't know it, you have to go there and look it up, because it's a really beautiful place. And I was very interested in making my own sanctuary of sorts. So I made this work. It's like 10 minutes long, and I wanted to write a piece for a choir because I wanted to make something that really felt intimate, even though it was on a large scale. And I was doing a lot of research into like Renaissance polyphony and I guess religious music. It's definitely a secular piece, but like those stylings. And so the choir, I had a live performance, and so the choir were wrapped around the room. So I think it was a 24-piece choir, and it was soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. The conductor in the middle, and then all the audience could come in and sit on the ground or whatever wall space there was. And so each wall is mapped to match the voice. So like the soprano voice was a lot more yellows and oranges, and the alto was red and deeper colors, and blues for the tenor and greens for the bass. So I was trying to do that synesthetic thing. And I was trying to have it so that the room was breathing and like brightening up and dulling down, and letting the light move around the room. And then certain parts, all the voices would come together, and the room would move in synchrony. So I'm just going to show maybe, it was 10 minutes, I'll show about 3 minutes of it. And it's 3 different distinct movements. And that piece really set out what I wanted to do, of like making a space that you can stay in for a long time and just chill out. And I think like consistently I'm seeing in myself that the work is kind of a meditation for myself, of just whatever way I can calm down and like just chill out with it, I guess. And like most prominently, I'm interested in spaces and what way I can reinvent them. This is a piece I'm working on at the moment in New Orleans for Luna Fest, which will be on in a few weeks. And they offered me, like, there's 2 streets in New Orleans, whatever building you feel like doing something with. And I was like, I'm just so uninspired by everything, I can't do it. And then I remember this warehouse that I love, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be a glutton for punishment, but can I project on the windows? Because projecting on windows is a pain. But this has been a real treat. And as well, this is very close to my heart, because a big thing that the MFA set me up for really well was critique and constant affirmation or no, that's shite. And since I finished my MFA, I have certain friends that are very invested in my work, and like they give me great feedback because they know what I'm capable of or not. So I've been like pushing this piece towards them all the time, like, because I've had to do a pretty quick turnaround. It's like sending it off. I'm like, is it okay? And I have a bunch of people that are just helping me out all the time, and I'm so bleeding lucky. And it's a great thing of being able to practice art all the time, that it becomes much more fluid. And just being able to share it, it puts more of an onus on me that I make work that they can be proud of, I guess, that I want to make it for them a lot of the time. And speaking to anecdotes, like I've been making work for water as well recently, and I brought, myself and my friends went up to Lake Pontchartrain in New Orleans to project on the water, and we brought up a generator one night, and we were projecting on the lake. And like my friend had a projector up on her head, and I was like standing on the levee like this with the computer. And one of my friends was like, what in the name of God is that? And we looked, and it was an alligator in the middle of the projector. And people have been wondering for eons how to catch alligators, and all you have to do is show them fine art, and they come. And so all the works are, I guess they're quite different, but they all deal with light and sound and synchrony and space, and troubleshooting and sharing my problems with my friends, because I need a lot of technical assistance, so people are great for that. And so if you ever look at my work, you'd be like, she has some good friends that take care of her. And I guess I'll leave it at that. It's been great to share the work with you, so thank you very much.